A very good evening to all of you. I welcome you all to the ICAN initiative, the Hindu and Indian Express analysis. So let's start the day with the topics. And I had asked all of you to send me the synopsis or collection of all the motivational stories that we have covered up till date. I have got a few responses, but I was busy in the weekend also, so I was not able to go through those compilation. So give me a day or two, so we'll restart with the motivational stories or personality that we will restart soon. So let's start with the topics. The first topic we'll be discussing today is about the impact of climate change on flora and fauna. So in your GS1 paper, you have a topic that's called as what is the impact of climate change on the distribution of flora and fauna. So this is one of the examples that can suit this particular topic. So you can mention this as an example when you're writing your answers on climate change and how has its impact been on the distribution of flora and fauna. Even last week we have already discussed some examples. Apart from that, last week itself we took up a full-fledged question on this and we have discussed that in detail. So now let's see this example. This example is about the Himalayan brown bear. So Himalayan brown bear has been occupying the elevation in the Himalayas, which is now under threat from the phenomena of climate change. So in a survey that was conducted by the Zoological Survey of India, it has been found that the habitations which are now occupied by this bear is going to see a sharp decline of 73% by the year 2050. So that is by the year 2050, there is going to be a sharp decline by 73% of the areas which are now inhabited by the Himalayan brown bear. Now such a sharp decline in the area that is the bears are inhabiting is going to therefore reduce the area that is habitable for the bear and is therefore not going to sustain the amount of a large or a good amount of the Himalayan brown bear population. Their population is also going to come down because their normal population cannot be sustained in a small quantity of the protected area. So this protected area that these bears are now occupying, or the bear's habitat is going to decline by 73% by 2050. So now as a result of this, the scientists are now coming out with a way forward and they are suggesting an approach that is called as adaptive spatial planning. So adaptive spatial planning is that to ensure that the protection is not just limited to the protected areas but also in the areas which are adjacent to these protected areas, so that the protection has to be more adaptive, not just limited to the protected areas but also in the neighboring adjacent areas, so that a spatial planning can be developed for their protection. So scientists as a way forward have now suggested to go for adaptive spatial planning. So this was about this topic. Now we'll move on to the next one. The next topic we'll be discussing is about the relevance of the non-alignment movement or NAM. So this is a part of your GS2 syllabus again, which is based on India's foreign policy. Previously in ICAN videos way back in April, May or June, we have already discussed about NAM and what is its current relevance. There have been two set of opinions on the relevance of NAM. There is one school of thought which believes that the NAM is long dead because NAM was based on the bipolarity in the world. So we must know that when the World War II got ended, then two blocks emerged in the entire world. One bloc that was led by the United States, which was mainly driven by the ideology of capitalism, and there was another bloc that was led by USSR, which was guided by the ideology of socialism. So various countries across the world that also became newly independent during those times, they sided with one of either the blocs, either the USA bloc or the USSR bloc. So this way the entire world got divided into two blocs. But however, India and several other developing countries remained a part of non-alignment movement, where they decided that they are not going to be part of this power play. They are not going to be part of either of the two power blocks. Rather, they would just remain neutral and they are going to be friends of both the countries, both the blocs. And what is most important for these countries at that time was to focus on the various problems and the challenges that the newly independent countries then were facing. So that is why they remained in the third category, which was the non-alignment movement, or the NAM, which said that they will not belong to either of the two blocs. So with the disintegration of the USSR that happened in the 1990s, then it was only USA that remained. So world became unipolar after the USSR disintegrated in 1990s. So with this unipolarity, one school of thought says that the NAM is now dead because the reason for the birth of NAM was the bipolarity of the world. But now, after the disintegration of USSR, once the bipolarity itself does not exist, NAM is irrelevant now. But there is another school of thought which believes that NAM is definitely relevant even today, and it can still uphold the various issues and causes of the developing countries currently as well. And India should revamp its NAM, and whatever its non-alignment movement credentials are there, it has to uphold the causes of these developing countries as part of the new and revamped NAM. This is what another school of thought believes. So basically on this we have already discussed a lot of content. I think we have also discussed a question on this. So now what this whole article is trying to tell is, now with the emergence of China, there is again a kind of emerging bipolarity between United States on the one hand and China, which is emerging so powerful economically as well as strategically. So there again there are chances that there is again going to be two poles, and India must reject this emerging bipolarity between US and China, and it should therefore revamp its NAM. And in the current and the emerging scenario, it also NAM is definitely relevant for India. So this is what I explained till now, that in the 1990s when USSR got disintegrated, it proved the success of the capitalism and the failure of socialism. So that time United States became the most important country and the most powerful country across the entire globe, and the USA became what is called as a global policeman. It led various international institutions. So it was all the US's say in the whole world during that time. But then later on, the USA also started to face a lot of problems. For example, the 9/11 terror attacks happened. So USA started to face a lot of non-conventional security threats that had started to emerge by then. So this started to happen, and in the 2008, when the economic crisis struck the entire globe, there was a global meltdown. Thousands of people lost their jobs and employment, and even the USA government had to bail out several private companies, private corporations out of the public money. The USA had to bail out. So the entire world faced a lot of economic crisis and job losses during the 2008 year. So all of these incidences since the 9/11 in 2008, and simultaneously with the rise of China, it proved that United States, its liberal world order, and that whole framework of the capitalism, they were not really very successful. So all of these incidences like 9/11 in 2008, particularly the 2008 global meltdown, shows that capitalism need not always be successful. So in fact, even during the current COVID-19 pandemic, so those countries which are run on various socialist principles have done better than the capitalist countries. So therefore, what we say that in the 1990s, with the disintegration of the USSR, just US remained, and because of the US or a unipolar world, it showed the kind of success of capitalism. But in the following years, we saw that even capitalism as an ideology has failed to give benefits to the people, to ensure the development which is more balanced and inclusive. So basically, the United States policies and the liberal world order have also failed to ensure the development. So in this context, now again there is a rise of China, there are trade wars emerging between China and United States. So all of these have shown two important things. One is that the US is no longer the world now is no longer a unipolar world, and whatever was the ideology of the United States, which is a liberal world order with the principles of capitalism being followed, so that has now failed. So firstly, the United States unipolarity does no longer exist. Its principles of new liberal global order and capitalism has also failed. And secondly, there is emergence of a bipolarity again, which we can see in the emergence and the rise of China. So China is now on the rise and it's economically becoming very, very powerful. So in the future, this emergence of bipolarity between USA and China is going to happen. So this is a second important thing that is now being seen. So because of the failure of capitalism and simultaneously the chances of emergence of a bipolar world, again, it's very important that India revives its NAM principles. So in this context, even this particular editorial is making a case for India to revive its NAM principles and apply that now to be the voice of all the developing countries in the world today, and put across the agenda for various reforms which are needed across various international institutions, which at present are still being dominated by the American powers. In this context, the article calls for redefining the non-alignment movement principles. So it says that now the goal of NAM should be to create an international order that is based on 1, mutual respect, 2, cooperation, and 3, participation. So now the aim of NAM, which India should reshape and revamp, should be to establish an international order that is based on the principles of mutual respect, cooperation among various countries across the globe, and participation of all the countries in dealing with some of the problems that is challenging the entire globe together. So, in the current instance, all the countries need to cooperate towards creating better health and educational infrastructure, which is very much today has become very important. So, like that, India should try and create an international order that is based on these principles. So the ultimate aim of NAM must be to create an inclusive and a multipolar just world order, because this is important because there is going to be an emerging bipolarity with the rise of China. So in order to tackle this, India must reject both the unipolarity of the United States that was happening since 1990s, and it should also reject the bipolarity that is going to emerge now between US and China. And rejecting the both, it has to now revamp its NAM principles and ensure working towards an inclusive, multipolar, and a just world order. So this was the essence of this entire article on NAM. Now let's move on to the next topic. Next, we will be discussing a small piece of data that is related to infrastructure. So infrastructure and its development and what are the issues related to infrastructure development in India is a part of your GS3 syllabus. Sometimes you may also have a question on the broader issue of what are all the issues related to the policy implementation in India. Though policies are formulated, they are not implemented in the right spirit. So one of the reasons for that is the time and cost overruns. So usually projects are not completed within the given deadline within which they have to be completed. Because the time is not adhered to, usually a lot of delay is involved. This delay also in turn causes cost overruns, because definitely the country is there is inflation that is present in the economy. So because of that, the more the delay, the more will be the cost overruns of the project. So whatever is going to be budgeted for a particular project, due to delay in the execution of that project, there is also going to be what is called as a cost overrun, which is increase in the cost of the project. So now the Ministry of Statistics and Program Implementation is monitoring some more than 1,661 infrastructure projects. So out of these 1,661 infrastructure projects, and all of them being more than 150 crores of project each one of them, so it is now seen that the original cost of all these projects was somewhere more than 20 lakh crore. But now it is seen that there is a cost overrun of all these infrastructure projects, and now the same number of projects are now costing more than 25 lakh crore, which means there is a cost overrun of nearly 21%. So this is one of the very important issues about implementing various projects in India, or implementing various policies in India. So many things are announced in the budget, but there is a delay. So there is time overrun, and this in turn leads to what is called as cost overrun. So usually more budget will have to be allocated for the same project, which could have a couple of years before been completed with a lesser budget. So this is one of the bottlenecks or the issues that is related to infrastructure. And you may have a question on the poor levels of infrastructure and logistics in India. So there is infrastructure bottleneck, which is a problem which even the investors are they always look forward for a good infrastructure being present. So this is one of the hurdles for attracting investments also, that the infrastructure is not up to the mark. So one reason for this is the time and cost overrun, and this is the precise data related to the cost overrun. So this data can be quoted in answers when you are talking about the issues related to infrastructure development in India. Now let's move on to the next topic. The next topic we'll be discussing is on India-Pakistan relations. So any bilateral relations are a part of your international relations topic under your GS syllabus too. So what this whole article is talking about is now the Financial Action Task Force or FATF has recently said that Pakistan is going to remain on the grey list. So Pakistan has been using its soil to launch terrorist activities on various countries, and it has also not been punishing various people and terrorist organizations who were involved in terrorist activities. So Pakistan had become a country where terrorism flourished. So in order to tackle this, the countries across the world have been pressurizing Pakistan, and the Financial Action Task Force, which is a global watchdog that deals with the anti-terror financing and also anti-money laundering activities. So it has put Pakistan under grey list, and it has given Pakistan a 27-point action plan, and Pakistan has been told to take action on all the 27 of these 27-point action plan, and only then Pakistan is going to be removed from the grey list. But Pakistan is yet to take action on 6 out of these 27-point action plan. So because of this, FATF has now retained Pakistan in the grey list itself. So this is good for India because India has always been one of the worst sufferers of terrorism that is emanating from Pakistan. So by the fact that the Pakistan since 2018 has been put under the grey list is good for India to attract all the international pressure on Pakistan to garner as much support from various countries across the world on Pakistan and pressurize Pakistan to act sternly on terrorism and terror related activities, terrorists as well as terror organizations. So Pakistan will have to freeze all the accounts and assets of people and organizations who are involved in terror activities, and the law enforcement agencies of Pakistan will also have to ensure that the people who are involved in terrorist activities are prosecuted and exemplary punishment is given to them. So all of these things will have to be ensured by Pakistan. So this is good for India to bring about an international pressure on Pakistan to act against terrorism. And for that, whenever you're writing about terrorism or India-Pakistan relations, so terrorism definitely becomes one of the most important components in our relation. And there can be a full-fledged question on terrorism itself. So whenever there is such a question, don't forget to mention about the Financial Action Task Force and the kind of role that it is playing by putting Pakistan under the grey list. Now, if Pakistan doesn't complete all the action plans, it may as well be put under the blacklist. So that is going to be worse for Pakistan because that will attract sanctions on Pakistan. So that is why now Pakistan is under pressure to act on the remaining points of this 27-point action plan. So this is it about the India-Pakistan relations and the terrorism. So now let's move on to the next topic. The next topic we'll be talking about is regarding the parliamentary committees. So you may have a question in your GS Polity paper, that is GS2 paper, about the parliamentary committees, what are they and how do they function, what is the importance of these committees, and also maybe the issues faced by these parliamentary committees. Since April, we have come across several very good examples of the effective functioning of parliamentary committees, which we have discussed. Apart from that, we have also taken up a question and we have discussed some of the ills of the parliamentary committees, or rather some of the issues due to which the working of the parliamentary committees is not up to the mark. So this article there was an article on again which is an example of the functioning of the parliamentary committees. That this example you can quote in such answers. So it was the Joint Committee on Personal Data Protection Bill. So this joint committee has now called to question various companies like Facebook, Google, Twitter and others. So first of all, this ensures that how these parliamentary committees can, this was actually a select committee of the parliament that was set up to analyze the personal data protection bill. So this can be quoted to show how the parliamentary committees could be set up on specific bills so that these bills could be deliberated and discussed in depth, and various pros and cons of the bills could be analyzed before converting this into a law, so that there are no negative consequences out of such bills. And also, as the personal data protection bill is one of the most important and widely discussed bill, and it has large amount of consequences and repercussions on the individual privacy in an environment that is filled with various digital ecosystems. So this bill was again very important bill, and that is how this committee again is very important, because it is going to examine this bill in great detail and come out with a report that is going to be tabled in the parliament and is going to be discussed. So any modifications that is required in this bill is going to be suggested by the committee. Now, as a part of its duty to discuss about this bill and make some necessary recommendations, it has now called to question the Facebook, Google, Twitter and other companies. For example, it has called Facebook to question Facebook about its advertisement model. What is its advertisement model? Then how is it that the Facebook is generating data in how much of data is being generated in India? So how much of that is being stored in India, and what data is being transferred out of India across the border to servers which are situated somewhere else, and how much of income it is generating in India, how much tax it is paying in India. So it is going to be questioned on all of these things. So this ensures the accountability of these companies also to these parliamentary committees, so that these companies also don't exceed their whatever their business is in India. So they don't exceed it, and they don't do anything that they are not supposed to be doing, because these countries after all have to work within the legal framework of India. So that is what it ensures, that these companies which have become very powerful are held accountable with the help of these parliamentary committees. So this can be quoted as an example when you're talking about parliamentary committees and their effective functioning. Now let's move on to the next topic. So this is the last topic we'll be discussing today, which is about the Central Bureau of Investigation. So CBI and the way it is functioning, its efficacy and all is a part of your GS2 syllabus, because CBI is also comes under the Delhi Special Police Establishment Act. So it is kind of a statutory body. So therefore, statutory body, its functioning and analysis will come under GS paper 2, and also it is related with investigating cases. So again, it is a part of your GS paper 2, like law and order, police, civil service, so all that. So the reason why CBI is recently in news is because the Maharashtra government has said that it is going to withdraw the general consent that it has given to CBI to investigate cases in Maharashtra. See, usually whenever there is any law and order problem or any crime that is happening in the country, there are two levels of responders. One is the local police, which is the immediate responder. Local police also being the state subject. It's also the closest to any crime that is occurring within the state. So it is a police which will respond to any crime that is happening in the state. That will be the first response of the police. But when it is felt that the case is more complex and it involves a huge amount of any economics is involved in it, or it is some sensational things, or it is related to some other kinds of complex issues which is maybe spanning across the states, it's an organized crime or something like that, and then usually the CBI is called in to investigate such cases. So usually CBI comes under a central act, and is therefore whenever the CBI comes into investigation within a state, the state will have to cooperate with the CBI during the investigation process. The state police will also have to cooperate with the CBI during the investigation process. So if the police investigates the same case, things would have been in the hands of the state government because police is a state subject. But once the CBI comes in, the control is lost by the state government. So it again completely, the control is taken now by the center because CBI now comes under the it's a centralized control. So the issue here is that now CBI has, and there have been various instances where the CBI has acted upon depending upon the instructions or the directions that it gets from the central government. So it has become that organization which is working at the behest of the center and according to the interests of the center. So though CBI is supposed to be a premier investigating agency in India, there have been instances where it is working at the behest of the center's interest. So this does not amount to a fair investigation in the states, and not just Maharashtra, even previously Andhra Pradesh, Chhattisgarh and West Bengal have also withdrawn this general consent that has been given to the CBI to investigate cases in the states. So this points out to two important issues. One is the credibility of the CBI as a premier investigating agency is being questioned here, which needs to be set right because it has to stand for fair investigation and people should have confidence in the investigation done by the CBI. So CBI as an institution, its reputation is under threat, its credibility and authority is under threat. So this has to be rectified by the CBI alone. And even in one of the previous Supreme Court cases, Supreme Court has held CBI to be the caged parrot. So this parrot will sing only the tune of its masters. So that is what the Supreme Court had told about CBI. So this perception needs to be changed and the CBI will have to work independently and prove its credibility and authority by conducting fair investigation. Now this is for the CBI itself to repair the damaged image. There is also one more issue that is related to this is the center-state relations. Now CBI, it's not under the control of the state. So states will have to give consent for the CBI to come in and investigate any cases in the particular state. So there are several complex interstate organized crimes which are there, which needs to be investigated by the CBI. In such cases, the states cooperate with the CBI and then they get the work done. But now if the CBI starts talking like the center or playing on the instructions and directions by the center, it kind of creates a distrust between the center and the states also. So now we talk about cooperative federalism on the one hand, but on the other hand, now already the center-state relations are deteriorating, particularly recently about the GST dues which the center had to pay the states. So like that, there are several issues. Now if the CBI goes to the states and starts taking the directions from the center and accordingly it investigates, which is not fair at all, so then it again creates further rift between the center and the states. So this is going to have an impact on the center-state relations as well. So this is also one of the dimensions when you talk about the center-state relations. So this one thing that which is the Maharashtra government's withdrawal of the general consent that is given to the CBI to investigate cases in Maharashtra has repercussions not just on the CBI as an investigating agency and its credibility, but also on the center-state relations. So this was about the CBI. Now let's look at the question that you have to attempt tomorrow. So today's question is, analyze the role played by the Central Bureau of Investigation as a premier investigating agency in India. It's a 15-marker question for 250 words. So now let's look at the question that we had taken up in the last class. So that question was, what is emotional intelligence, and maybe what will you do to cultivate emotional intelligence in you? So firstly, let me tell you, I was very busy in the weekend, so I couldn't get time to go through your answers and also to prepare for this question. So what I'll be doing is I'll give you a broad outline how you have to attempt such questions in the exam. So first, obviously the question is asking you to define emotional intelligence, which you can create your own definition, like it is about being aware of our emotions, being able to manage our emotions and use them in the right proportions, in the right time with the right people. So all of those things, the combination of all that is called as emotional intelligence. Now here, many of you who have done some study about emotional intelligence or your paper 4 in general will know that emotional intelligence and the components of emotional intelligence was given by a person called as Daniel Goleman. So there are apparently 4 to 5 components of emotional intelligence that you talk about, which has been given by Daniel Goleman. But I would also like to mention that I have told this repeatedly before also, that I for one have not referred to any particular book for ethics. So when I used to write any answer, I did not even know about the existence of Daniel Goleman. Now, this is not to say that you should not learn about him or not use the concepts that have been said by him. But what I want to tell you is, supposing you go to the exam hall and you see emotional intelligence, and you just write a general answer and come back, then somebody is discussing about Daniel Goleman after the exam. So don't break your head over that. So don't start being worrying that you did not know the concept given by Daniel Goleman. So it's not mandatory that you have to mention Daniel Goleman. If you know, it's well and good, but otherwise also you can make a very beautiful answer. In ethics, the style of writing the answer should not be very textbook kind of an answer writing, but rather it should come from your heart. So that can happen even without knowing about Daniel Goleman. So if you know, make use of the concept and you can write a good introduction. If you don't know, even then you can write a good introduction. So then you will have to come to the second part, which is about how you are going to cultivate within you this emotional intelligence, which is a virtue. Now, here again, what I would like to mention is, you don't need to use some very hi-fi very high level concepts and how you can inculcate your emotional intelligence. So in this, you can take the help of your syllabus itself. Your syllabus itself mentions a lot of keywords which can act as a cue for you, which can act as a little trick for you to be able to initiate your brain into thinking in that direction. When the word says emotional intelligence, start thinking about various emotions and what you would have done to quell that emotion. That itself will form a good answer. So you don't have to worry about writing some of the very high-end concepts to inculcate emotional intelligence. Now, for example, let's say patience. So patience is one emotion. So if you don't have patience, we usually become short-tempered. So patience can be cultivated by doing so many things. For example, cooking is one thing, and cooking and painting, they are those kinds of things which actually teaches you a lot of patience. And they are those kind of things which, if you do in a hurry, that's not going to work. So you will be a bad cook and a bad painter if you do it in a hurry. So these are some of the things. There is therapeutic painting which goes on, therapeutic cooking that goes on, because some people are really impatient and short-tempered. So patience can be cultivated by these kinds of things, which will have to be done very patiently and at their own pace without getting hurried into it. So these small things will also matter a lot in cultivating your emotional intelligence, which is nothing but learning how to manage your emotions. Second, sometimes you may have a lot of irritation and frustration. You don't know why you're being frustrated about, so you feel very low and depressed. So for that, different people do different things. Some people go and hit their gym, some people just dance their heart out as though nobody is watching. So there are so many things that you do to quell your irritation. Also mention that. So there is nothing wrong in mentioning in your answer that you would rather go and have a quick walk or a jog or a cycle and come back, or dance and come back, so you will feel more fresh and your dopamine levels is going to increase and you will stop feeling irritated. So there is nothing wrong in writing such things. Next comes the role of religion. Religion has a very significant role to play in managing your emotions. For example, Bhagavad Gita says karmaneva adhikaraste ma phaleshu kadachana, which means that you have to write only on the work but not on the fruits. So just concentrate on working and putting the maximum effort that you can without worrying about the results. So this helps us in quelling our anxiety and fear, and this is very much applicable even for the UPSC aspirants. Most of the time we spend in insecurity, fear, and being anxious about what is going to happen on the day of the exam. What all I'm learning, is it going to appear, is it going to be helpful, of any help in the exam? So this these kinds of religious preaching, they teaches you to be calm and just focus on the work at hand and forget about the result. So that again helps you manage your emotions related to fear, anxiety, and insecurity. Then comes the role of leaders. So leaders also have a very powerful role to play. Just think about our nationalist movement leaders, our freedom fighters. They have taught us the emotions of being leaders and being supreme sacrificers. If there is a cause, if there is a principled cause, they go to any extent and sacrifice everything to get that done. So like that, they were the believers in the power of the people. So they taught us a lot of things, and these leaders are again a powerful source for us to read about them and to aspire to be like them and have that emotional intelligence within us. Next also comes the role of philosophies. Here again, for example, if I'll take it through an example, if you are a person who you are unable to control your emotion of anger and you're a short-tempered person, so just go back to your basic philosophies. For example, Buddha. So Buddhism is again a philosophy. Buddha told that anger is like grasping hot coal in your hand. It is going to burn you first. After that, if you throw it at someone, it is going to burn someone else also. So basically, if you're grasping hot coal in your hand, before you throw it onto some other person and think about harming that person, the hot coal is first going to harm your own hand. So anger is like that. So think about these philosophies, which makes a lot of sense and helps you calm down on your emotions. Then comes the role of parents. So definitely parents are a very good source of cultivating your emotional intelligence. Parents have gone through a lot of difficulties in their lives where anybody would have been so hopeless, but they always guide you in your lives, that they did not leave that hope when everything else was going against. There were so many odds in life, but they still had that hope burning within them. So this role of parents, again, parents can be a very good source of emotional intelligence. Looking at your parents, you learn to manage your emotions, that no matter how much of despair and how much of difficulties I am in today, I'm going to go through all of this and I'm going to emerge victorious, because I have standing examples right in front of me who have done the same. So that also helps me in, or anyone for that matter, to cultivate that emotional intelligence. Next is also the role of exposure. So whatever we are exposed to also helps a lot in inculcating that emotional intelligence. For example, if as a kid, somebody as part of the school trip, if you are being taken to a child orphanage, or if you're taken to a old age home, or if you're taken to a forest, so you develop different kind of emotions which are actually a balance. You develop empathy when you are being taken to orphanage or old age homes. You develop that empathy and compassion towards them, and when you're being taken to forests and stuff like that, you develop that environmental ethics and the importance of the forest and the wildlife. That's what you develop. So all of these kinds of exposure also gives us a lot of emotions and helps us to balance that emotions within ourselves. So like that, just think about various emotions that is possibly impacting you today, and think about what you can actually do to manage those emotions. So even if you're not prepared for this answer beforehand, so there is nothing to worry. Just think about the emotions in the examination hall, and you will come out with innumerable number of ways on how to inculcate emotional intelligence. Now, as I said, what all I discussed now is based on pure personal experience, right? So it doesn't have to be something like I'm going to be self-aware, I'm going to be what I'm going to be self-aware, I'm going to be talking more, I'm going to meditate, yoga. Yes, that is all good, but I'm going to be self-aware means how are you going to be self-aware? So there is no need for you to think of these hi-fi concepts and then write your answer such that it becomes very bookish. So don't do that. Write in the very simplest of languages possible and from your own personal experience. So we all go through a lot of emotions, both good and bad, every day in and day out. So we have been managing all of that pretty well till now, and will continue to do so in the future, which means some amount of emotional intelligence we have already inculcated and we are practicing. Whatever little is left, we need to do it in the future as well. So we already know a lot about it. So just from your practical experience, try to write. Don't rely on any sophisticated terminology and usage of jargons that is not needed in your exam. So these were the other articles that weren't really important, or we have discussed about it earlier. This was about United Nations journey again, about which we have already discussed in detail. So that is it for today. Thank you.